I am now about to launch Gideon, America's first ever AI threat detection platform built specifically for law enforcement. It scrapes the internet 24/7 using an Israeli-grade ontology to pull specific threat language and then routes it to local law enforcement. It's a 24/7 detective. It never sleeps, and it's going to get us in front of these attacks.
Would it have picked up on this, do you think?
100%. I wish my program would already be up. We're not launching until next week. I've got a dozen agencies on board, Trace. I just unloaded a major Northeast agency with over 2,700 sworn. This is America's early warning system.
Lieutenant.
Correct.
Yeah, he's really trying to sell that. Not a big flex to call it Gideon or that it's based on Israeli ontology. So what up, fam? Welcome to Colonial Outcast, the podcast that is no doubt on the top of the list in Palantir's database. If we're not, I'm embarrassed about that. So it is interesting how Palantir and just big tech in general does shape our reality. And I stumbled upon a good anecdote of that this morning. I had Laith Marouf from Free Palestine TV on a couple of days ago, and he explained how when Hezbollah liberated Mayala, which is an ancient Syrian city town notable for its Christian heritage and unique Aramaic-speaking population, and it was being held captive by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, with nuns being held captive. However, Hezbollah recaptured it, and as Laith pointed out, the local population, notably the nuns and the priest, would kiss the Hezbollah fighters, because as you may or may not know, Hezbollah and Hamas are known for being very protective of other sacred religious sites that are not necessarily Islam, unlike ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which actually destroy them. And as we know, which two are being funded by the US and Israel? It's ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which is something that not a lot of Americans are privy to, because when we think about resistance, we are always painted this picture of Islamic extremism and terrorism, and never considering the fact that it is patriotic resistance from an indigenous population. So, but going back to Palantir, Pegasus, Gideon, Albit Systems, Anduril Systems, L3 Harris Technologies, Variant Systems, Clearview AI, all very dangerous and predatory surveillance companies ran by the same people who frequented Little St. James. I understand that a lot of these force multipliers by the Epstein class seem scary, and the task of unifying the working class is even more daunting. And just to make it extra complicated, liberals in the Democratic Party continue to enforce the illusion that they are somehow a legitimate and viable alternative to Republicans who are blatantly fascist after they funded and supplied a genocide during the Biden administration, and after it's been completely exposed that they are lobbied and have large investments in the same mega corporations that Republicans do. My fellow revolutionaries, I understand your frustration, trust me. But despite all of that, you'd be surprised about how many force multipliers we have at our disposal, and how we don't even realize it because we're in shock and awe of theirs. But just as the Apache, the Maroons, the Haitians, the Algerian FLN, the Mau Mau, the Viet Cong, the Scottish under William Wallace, Palestinian, Lebanese, and Yemeni resistance has proven, there are old school ways we can combat it. And there are ways we can get average people to rebel if our class war propaganda is good enough. Revolution is about seduction when you really break it down. You have to get people to want it as if it were a carnal desire. That's the art. And we have to be better at it than the Epstein class. We can try and break it down idealistically or logically all day long, but unless it gets to the point of an unconscious primal compulsion for the population, it's just going to be put into the category of activism. And that's why we need outstanding influencers, or I would say wise guides, as I call them, or cultural interfaces is even a better term, who can break these things down to people who struggle with discerning what's happening. And one of my favorite influencers that I'm honored to have on, who is not only sophisticated and very advanced, but not snobby, which is a rare combination in this world of revolutionary activism. So Isabella, also known as Champagne Socialist, and you can find her at her handle is socialista.champagne. She is a UX designer with Tech for Palestine. You might have heard some of their BDS and protest workshop fundraising, finding apps like Boycat and Jaywalk.
That's right. Yeah.
Jaywalk. Brazilian Canadian activist and political analyst trying to make sense of this crazy mess right now. and what we all can do about it. And I gotta say that one of the biggest struggles that Greg and I face as we've gone on this journey of podcasting is we feel lonely. There's a loneliness that we feel in this space because we're having to battle liberal propaganda with right-wing propaganda, with all the psyops that are unleashed in the social media sphere and space in the internet. And it's so hard to keep people focused on the goal. And I feel like as a population, we get amnesia. That's the biggest killer. The Democrats can literally fund and facilitate a genocide. But because of the shock and awe of this fascist regime under the Trump administration, we get amnesia about the fact that they started the genocide. So it's this, and Americans are very, particularly susceptible to that, I would say, as opposed to a lot of other, regions, cultures. So sorry, that was a long monologue and a long introduction, but I was trying to be artistic about it. So how are you doing? It's like I said, and when we met, I'm starstruck to meet you. I've always been a fan when I saw your first video on TikTok, and then I went on Instagram, like, oh my God, she's already following me. Ah! And I was like a little girl at a Justin Bieber concert, screaming and blushing. So how you doing?
I'm doing great. And yeah, likewise, your podcast has given me sanity during these times and definitely made me feel way less alone in times where it just feels like you're the only one. And yeah, just to add what you were saying, the American population is strategically divided and conquered and individualist. And that is going to be, I think, one of the biggest challenges is just healing that cultural divide and getting people to push past the phase that we're in now, which is like the middle class complacency. People are going to wait till one day they turn their tap on and there's no water. That's like, we need to not get to that point. We need to do things now and start organizing and not wait until we're very uncomfortable. We need to have that future foresight now. You're in the belly.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, Greg's an accelerationist, meaning he's like, we have to get to this point of like apocalyptic scenario, and then we'll wake up. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's laziness, bro. Yeah. and I'm like, we can get there without having to get to that point. In fact, it's better that we get started now because of the tools and the freedoms, what little freedoms we have left to actually use as our ecosystem of setting things up. And I would say that they wouldn't be investing in all of these psyops and all of these divisive tactics and all this technology if they didn't think we were a threat now. I think they're just hoping we don't wake up to that. So what inspired you though?
Like a little bit right though, because throughout history, unfortunately, people do seem to wait to get to this breaking point before they mobilize. But I think at this point, with all the knowledge that we have, all the historical knowledge, all the present knowledge, we should be able to do better. And then with the, of course, impending climate scenario, I feel like hopefully we'll be the first to have a little bit more future foresight before we get to that point. We've never had technology in the state that it's in before. So yeah, the time to start really, I mean, it's yesterday, but better now than never. Better now than starving.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just like to give Greg shit for that, and I call him emo Greg, and then I'll like start singing in emo just to bug the shit out of him. But yeah, you're right. He is right, and he's right in a lot of things. But as a militant anarchist, I feel like it's my duty to say no, that's not how it is, even if it's right.
Yeah. What the fuck are we gonna do? Sit around and wait for that moment, and then be like, "Oh shit, I don't know what to do now." Like, no, it's like we got to start in some way.
And yeah, you're touching on something concerning like our attitude about this. And the way I look at it is, and what I always tell people is, we are in a war. And that is not metaphorical. It is not a hyperbole. We are absolutely in a war because of the dialectical contradictions between us and the ruling class. They see themselves as at war with us. We're still waking up to the fact that we're at war with them. And I had like an epiphany the other day where I was thinking about how, like, do you know why they have such an advantage over us? And I came to the conclusion that the biggest advantage they have over us is that they know what their goals are. They know who the enemy is, and they are clearly focused on that enemy, which is us. We just haven't woken up to the fact that they are our enemy. We are.
And they know they're at war. We don't know we're at war. They already chose war. We don't know that we're there yet. So, you know, they're already strategizing for it. And we still think that it's a future event that's coming.
Yeah. Like they will take as much ground as quickly as they can if they can take it. We think that we have time. We think that things are going to go more cordially and more officially. No, if they can get away with it, they'll do it. So I want to like, when did you start becoming an influencer? Like what launched your journey on that?
Honestly, kind of dabbled into it my whole life, protesting in Canada against several pipelines, getting arrested over pipelines. But obviously the last 2 years have really kicked it into full gear. The genocide in Palestine kind of woke that up in me again to start sharing what I know and to start connecting with community and start building that again, rather than just waiting for things to happen. So while I've dabbled in it my whole life, I'd say the past few years are really when I sought community and other groups and Tech for Palestine and people like that to work with and platforms to share with. But it never feels like enough, you know, and I'm sure you share this feeling. It's like we're like these talking heads here trying to bridge these gaps between impossible groups of people dealing with propaganda from both sides, trying to make them somehow connect together. And one side's classist, the other's racist. It's hard, you know. But we keep at it. I feel like leftists are a bit crazy in that regard, that we just keep at it.
Yeah, we are self-masochistic in many ways. We put ourselves through so much stress, you know, but we know we see it as a duty. Now, with particularly some like advice that I'm asking from you is because here's where I feel you definitely have some advantages and upper ground over me in so many ways. And that goes to the topic of liberals. And I'm going to play this video just as a primer for this discussion that I thought was hilarious. And it is such a good analogy. By the way, yeah, you've seen this. By the way, the caption says, Trump, I'm declaring martial law in 2 cities and plan to do the same in more. And liberals. Kylie Jenner. Yay, and everything's good.
I hate it.
Oh God, it is so good though, because it's so true.
It's an accurate portrayal.
That is my weakness. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like I try to improve myself constantly, but my biggest kryptonite are liberals. See, I can walk into a room full of MAGA and I will own that room in 3.5 nanoseconds. I will have them talking like Malcolm X by the time I'm finished with them. I can do it. They're like, like your right-wing working class are like putty in my hands. I can shape them however I fucking want. Liberals, here's the problem. I don't know. I don't know how to deal with sociopathy. If I tell them, hey, did you know that they are like Democrats are like funding Israel right now and they're massacring like, you know, hundreds of thousands of kids. They'll be like, yes, I know it's tragic. It's so bad. But, and I'm just like, what, why is there a but in there? What do you mean but? There is no but after that sentence. I'll go to MAGA and be like, hey, do you know this is happening with your tax money right now? Here's what they'll say. God damn, I didn't know that was true. Is that true? And then they'll dig into it. Like, that's fucked up. We got to do something about it. And I get them hyped up easily. That's the difference. Yeah. You have had to deal with liberals a lot more than I have, though. What have you seen to be the biggest challenge, and also the things that you've learned that actually allow success in that field?
Mm-hmm. Biggest challenge is the reactionary tendency of liberals. For sure, a lot of liberals get really reactive before they process, you know, what they're reading about, and obviously they've been indoctrinated into their own set of, you know, blue MAGA propaganda that they're unlearning, but they think that it's, you know, they've learned that their way is the correct one. It's a lot easier to understand liberalism when you understand that it is the politics of maintaining status quo. So even when they're offering solutions or suggesting things or their arguments, you'll notice that the bottom line is that there's not a whole lot of change, so the biggest challenge is just dealing with them not being able to recognize that they're just wanting to keep things as is, maybe with rainbow flag here and there, some welfare checks, but like not actually fundamentally change the system and to take them to that next level of understanding it. Honestly, I've had success with, the classic presenting studies to them, that contradict what they've known their whole lives. And then just being like, look, this is actually backed by a lot of research. So that's a great surefire way to reach out to them. And also there's a really kind of human side of it too, just acknowledging, not being reactive in response. Sometimes it's hard, I'll admit, but also just being able to ground them into a conversation, asking questions, asking a lot of questions, and they'll kind of come to some contradictions within their own questions. But honestly, I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like I'm having more luck with more conservative-minded people these days than liberals are a fucking tough nut to crack.
They are.
Like straight up, like I've had people message me like, I used to be conservative and now I'm not anymore after finding your page or whatever, and that doesn't really happen with liberals as often. So I actually feel like it's the hardest crowd.
When did you learn that? When did you come to that realization? Like, how long ago was that?
To be honest, pretty quickly. Like
are we talking like years ago or like recently?
Like years ago.
Okay.
Like when I started sharing more actively about this, I noticed right away that liberals were the most reactive. Because they see their solution as the end all, and they see you as the barrier to their progress because they see themselves as the left, so you have to explain and this goes for both sides of the spectrum. I feel like being able to explain things in the most accessible terms is always going to be the better way to do it. You don't need to cite a bunch of old books. You just need to just talk about things in a language they'll understand and point to current events and history. History is always my biggest grounding point for anything that I do. I look to history, and that's what I try to share with people, identifying patterns in history. And really sometimes the medium is more important than the message. So let's say the way you communicate is more important. Liberals are so they're all about communication, you know what I mean? Sometimes more than what they're actually, it's all about performing for them in some way.
I feel like they all grew up watching Broadway shows.
Yeah, dude, but there is this performative, argumentative thing with them, and it's very superficial, to be honest, at times. And that's why I think it's really hard to break through than someone who's genuinely I'm confused, looking for answers. I want to understand how things work. I don't know how to describe the shit that I believe in or don't believe in, but let's talk about it. And then there's been a lot of indoctrination in liberalism in the last few years, I feel like, especially there's just identity politics and all these things that have kind of taken the forefront of liberalism more than things like economic policy or class analysis. So I feel like when that's triggered, it can be really hard to break that wall.
Yes.
When the identity reductionism, I should say, not so much identity politics, but just identity reductionism, reducing everything to identity, then that's been the biggest challenge in talking with liberals in the last few years. But I try to just not feed into that anymore and just straight up just go right to talking about class and not even, bring it back to their identity politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's always the smartest default move is going to class. That's what I'm constantly being told. Yeah, I also think to compound the problem is the fact that the source of liberalism, I guess the official hierarchy of liberals, is ultimately the Democratic Party, right? Which they're the vanguard, they're the flagship for liberalism. And because that well is poisoned and everybody's drinking from that well, even if they're not core hardcore Democrats, they're still all the sentiments and the information and the, I guess, calls to action ultimately are trickling down from the DNC, which is absolutely evil. So you have that. If the upper hierarchy of liberalism and the vanguard for liberalism is the Democratic Party, everything else is going to be poisoned downriver, right? Yeah. And then you have the issue of the fact that it's the way I kind of categorize liberals. And people keep telling me stop categorizing people. It's like, you know what? It's a good mental tool for me to like organize myself. Okay, I have ADHD. I have to get in categories. Okay, so you have liberals who are, and I call them like the hardcore, like core of liberalism. They're sociopaths, right? Like they are absolutely sociopathic. It's not so much that they're brainwashed. They are genuinely, they don't care about human suffering. They just care about how they look.
Yeah.
And then you got liberals who they do care.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say there is the positive side of liberalism, which I didn't touch on, was the people that do have empathy already cultivated. And that's sometimes what liberals have that conservatives don't. They already have an empathy in a sense of wanting equality and justice for people. And you know, they have that established, and that's a really strong point to connect for sure.
Yes. And
yeah.
I know plenty of those.
For sure.
I know a lot of liberals who are genuinely good people. They do care, but because they are being influenced by these sociopaths who tend to be like the alphas, I guess you would say, the alphas, they're kind of intimidated by these sociopathic alpha liberals who, and because this, a lot of liberals who are genuinely empathetic and they want to do something, they don't know which way to go. They don't know how to apply their empathy. So the sociopath offers them the route, or offers them the door, opens a door for them for, oh, you're empathetic, come in this door. And that door just leads to futile routes of changing things like voting Democrat, voting blue, writing your local senator, you know, talking shit about conservatives, using buzzwords.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of what do you call it? Pure bad influence on good liberals, like liberals who genuinely want to change things. And that's why I love people like you who are out there, because you're kind of like that guiding light for those types of liberals to actual revolutionary leftism, you know?
And I mean, I have to take some responsibility too. I feel like I dabbled into liberalism like a year and a half in my life. I feel like I was starting to go in that direction too, until I snapped back out of it and got back into my radical roots. So I feel like that's why I try to have a lot of empathy for them, because I know how easy it is to get swayed by these narratives that are out there. And I've been like that. Indoctrination has infiltrated me too. And I know that it's an external indoctrination, and that's preying on their good feelings and their empathy. Yes. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting the battles that you and I are fighting. I'm over here using my specialty, my forte of reaching to conservative, right-wing, working class people. You're waging your battle to try to bring those empathetic, you know, liberals on board with.
I'm like, hey, liberals, I get a steady limit. But I mean, hey, like whatever gets the point across.
No, you're good at it. And it's interesting to like kind of like cross-pollinate with people like yourself who have a specialty of being able to talk to like real people, like who are not really liberals. They just think that they are. They're actually leftist. Yeah, it's an identity crisis thing. And what's interesting is I never went through liberalism. Usually it's so weird because like for me, and I have to chalk that up to Palestine. Palestine is what did that. So most people, they who wind up in the left camp, who were a like conservative nationalist, which is what I used to be. I used to be a Christian nationalist 20 years ago out of high school. You kind of like go through liberalism, you go through the Democratic Party, and then you move over to the left as you radicalize. I skipped that step because when I went to Palestine and I saw how Palestinians were treated and I saw how they lived their lives, I immediately went into a depression. I became an anarchist. I was like, fuck everything. Like everything about the system is wrong. Liberal. So I never went through that tunnel of being a liberal. So I didn't get the liberal goo on me, you know? Yeah. And so it's a weird thing. I skipped a step. And but it's also allowed me to be able to connect and interface with what I used to be, those Christian nationalists, you know, who don't know any better. But I want to touch on there's so many good videos you put out in this past like month. I don't know which one to go to talk about first, but You were talking about like resistance, like how we're not like the distraction of voting, the distraction of the election system. We simply are not going to get out of this bullshit until we have an actual revolution. There's no option. There's no soft landing for that. And I want to go into that because it's just the Band-Aid that we have to rip off. We have to rip off that Band-Aid of just acknowledging the fact that there has to be a hard revolution. And we were talking about, as opposed to voting and using the electoral system as our roots, we need to start doing what? What is your, the points that you've been trying to drive?
So yeah, I mean, as opposed to voting is a good start, because we should be building, I don't know if it's all right for me to dive into some of the stuff that was in some of the documents that we've been.
You can dive into whatever you want.
Okay. I do think that, starting to foster alternate supply chains, alternate communities that can challenge these systems, not relying so much on the tools that we're using. I know these are very like big things to wrap our heads around right now, but it does need to start somewhere with that. Yeah, and one thing that I was saying to you, like we keep generating capital for the people that we're trying to overthrow by using their apps. So that makes them more powerful. It also allows our movements to amplify, but I think at some point that contradiction, and now with increased Palantir surveillance, I think that's going to become more of a concern, that we're going to have to move away from these apps and keep our communication offline and compartmentalized and, not so easily trackable, because it's their biggest weapon right now. And I don't think we should underestimate it. So if we're planning all of our revolutions on camera, on these apps, they're going to find out about it really quick.
Yes.
So that's first and foremost a consideration. Yeah.
Yes. You had mentioned in one of your videos that like we have to start building local power structures. So we're talking about voting. Okay, let's talk about voting. If you want to vote, the most important vote you can make is amongst a council in your own neighborhood and voting on your self-defense mechanism in case fascist thugs roll into your neighborhood. That's how you can vote. If you want to vote of where, if we collectivize some money in a money pool in your local neighborhood, where could we apply that money to take care of the people in your neighborhood who are vulnerable, who need support? That's the voting you should be concerned about. That leaves us with the big elephant in the room, which is what you texted me about and you brought up. And I know it's been giving you a very depressing outlook on the future, and that is big tech surveillance, the tools that the ruling class has now over our lives and our willingness to give up our freedoms to that. Palantir, which is probably going to be the flagship of this. So what do we do? What do we do to counteract Palantir and this big tech surveillance state?
Well, obviously the conversation about encrypted apps is not a new one. A lot of activists are already using Signal. A lot of regular people are not, though, but a lot of activists are already moved on to Signal. However, as we learned in recent news, even encrypted apps will be compromised by, it's called Paragon, this new Israeli spyware. So, but it is still, it makes it's one extra costly layer for them to go through. Like getting off Google, signing on to Proton Mail, no longer using like Safari, Chrome, Edge, no longer using those browsers, switching to Mozilla or Brave. Mozilla is like a nonprofit and they're privacy focused, or Tor is like the most secure. But Tor is a bit overkill. Obviously for daily use, it can be really slow. Tor is like the browser that's used to access the dark web. There's all kinds of tools. I think it would be worth to circulate, some of these resources digitally on paper, because it's a lot of things for people to remember. There's so many different kinds of software that can aid us, but the software as we're learning. So use the end-to-end encrypted tools, and maybe we can circulate that as like, document, so people have like, okay, I know what to go for this. This is an alternative. We've got a list of that. but also the big component, which is the compartmentalization of your identity and data, which is something that I've started to do now too. Use different emails for different things, different emails for your banking, different emails for your social media, a pseudonym when you can. So these extra measures that can just create inconsistencies in the data that Palantir is going to be tracking, because Palantir is looking for patterns, and you want to break those patterns as much as possible and create inconsistencies and leads that are misleading, and make them not be able to categorize you or give them a false categorization of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like the most bulletproof, is the compartmentalization of our identities and data in the face of the surveillance, while also using these encrypted apps. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff these days. There's something called no script. This is like the nuclear option if you're browsing the web. It basically gets rid of all JavaScript, Flash, and what's the other one? Java items on the page. It'll break websites, but it's the most powerful tool to avoid being tracked on the web. So again, there's like a plethora of resources that are out there now that people should start using as of yesterday, even just not to support things like Google anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, while we got the sad news that in the States, even encrypted apps are compromised, they are still an extra layer of protection, and it's still worthwhile doing. And you're still kind of moving away from the big tech companies. So that's still very important, but really it's the creating the chaotic breadcrumbs that can't lead back to you is going to be increasingly more important.
Yes, I was. It was great info you had mentioned. What's interesting was when I sent you that plan for building community, you sent something back to me about how we need to start like using counterintelligence methods to counter like big surveillance tech, and how big surveillance tech will be the Achilles heel of any community building that's going to be effective or that's a threat to the ruling class. What's ironic is like I had formed a paper on or a guidebook that I was working on just about Palantir and how we can defeat it, that I thought that I had sent to you, but you didn't even see it. And then you were kind of ahead of the conversation with that. So the issue is, okay, we need all the resources that you just outlined. We hear about these things and people watch videos informing them of these very effective apps or digital methods, but we need to consolidate all that into a simple like guidebook, right?
Yeah, totally.
Now, the other thing though is the challenge we have is that we have to assume that anything digital can be compromised. They have tools that we don't even know about. And I know there's a lot of panic about Palantir and this announcement of Gideon and the Paragon systems and Pegasus. But here's the thing. They probably already have access to a lot of our digital data and a lot of our tools that we use. And they've had access for decades. We just didn't know about it. I believe that a lot of these announcements that they're making is just a way of acclimating us to it and making us to accept it and slow boiling the frog to the point where we don't even care anymore.
We're in it.
Exactly. So the fact of the matter is Apple is owned by, they're a Zionist company. If Israel wants the backdoor keys to Apple, they'll just give it to them and we will never know about it. They'll if these companies who actually manufacture our phones are Zionist, then we have no idea what they're seeing on our phones without even the use of these tools like Paragon or Pegasus. So we just have to accept and not be naive that they don't already have these bases covered. However, this is where we're being overly pessimistic. Palantir, in my opinion, is a glorified calculator. And I know that's oversimplistic, and I know that it's a lot more complicated than that. But what I mean by that is it has to rely on data sets and data points. And what we've learned from resistance groups is that when they go high tech and you go low tech, suddenly the more high tech they are, the more of the fragility is showing about those technologies. And that's why I wrote this guidebook on how we can defeat Palantir. Problem is this guidebook has to be embraced en masse by community. It's a community effort. If only one family or household does that, it doesn't really do anything to Palantir. But if thousands of people start doing it, starts to cause an issue. Hundreds of thousands, now it's mission critical. Millions, Palantir is losing it. They don't have any way of defending against it. So I'm going to share this screen real quick, and I showed this this guidebook to you. Okay, so I titled it "Gouging the Eyes of the Beast: A Community Guide on How to Degrade Palantir," proposal by Mark Wayne to be reviewed by Black Panther Party cadres. So the Black Panthers will be reviewing this document and giving their input. So Palantir operates on, it has to have data sets. It has to have information. There's a lot of tactics that were used in World War II by the French resistance and by the old OSS, the precursor to the CIA. So this is basically a guide that I put together to utilize a lot of techniques that have been used in the past and they're still effective today. One of those being, though, is the idea that whenever you want to communicate something to somebody that is relevant and it's sensitive information, it has to be done in an air gap, meaning it has to be done the old-fashioned way, by word of mouth, written down in privacy, where there is nothing that has a chip or that can communicate with the outside world. That's first and foremost. Second is securing your communication space. So when the geolocation is how they track your phone or your device. It's done by triangulating your position through cell phone towers and satellites. What you have to understand is if you are using any communication device that you do not want tracked, or you do not want that communication device to be tied to you, it has to be in a Faraday bag from the moment it's purchased. And it can never be at a location that you frequent that is known to be tied to you, because the way that Palantir works, it uses an algorithm. It takes data points and then it maps you out, and it can figure out who you are. For example, if I buy a burner phone and that burner phone is geolocated to my house, it's going to automatically know, okay, this guy bought a burner phone. This burner phone isn't some anonymous person. It's been parked here at this location. So we know who he is, and they just put that in your file. So that's how, when people are often shocked that I hear them say, "Well, I used a burner phone. How did they know?" It's because just because it's a burner phone doesn't mean it can't be used to track you. The way that algorithms work, it maps people out based on these data points. So, like you said, disrupting patterns with false narratives. So there was methodologies that were used in World War II where people who wanted the enemy to map them out in the way that did not reflect reality, they would have a multi-layered approach to deception, meaning not only would they have a false bio or false intentions, they would have another false intention layered below that. So one way you can do that when it comes to Palantir tries to map you based on spying on your text messages, the videos you watch, what you say over the phone. So if what you're saying over the phone and what you're texting does not align with who you really are, well, then it's going to build a false map about you, like you said, right? What are your thoughts on, like, an example of how that it's done? Like how the population can start doing something like that?
I feel like creating maybe new profiles under, like, yeah, that's a tricky one. So I'm like, if you use your email, this is the part where I'm still a bit confused about how this would work. You can create a new email and a whole new identity and persona online. Mm-hmm. And just like Facebook pages that are related to like whatever vegan cooking or this, like you can basically live out this fake profile online. And then it's connected to your laptop and phone if they really wanted to track it.
They'll still track it.
Yeah. But I'm still the part that I'm still figuring out with this. I don't know if you have any insights, is how is your own identity still preserved? You know what I mean? Because the only way I can see this being successful is if we start doing this now under our existing emails that we're using, existing profiles account, and we start that not create a separate one, but we start doing that with our own data now. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Well,
personas,
the goal here is not to hide your identity. The goal here is to try and trick the algorithm into it has to make a choice of what is your true identity. Like, is this guy MAGA? Does he secretly support Trump, or is he secretly a leftist commie, or is he a Democrat? You create multiple personalities that make the algorithm try and figure out which one you really are. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to figure out like which one is the deception, which one is the false identity, which one's the real one. And if you do that, if you throw out mixed signals, which is called like the signal to noise ratio when it comes to AI, it has to now put that extra effort into discerning who you really are, what you really support, what your views are. Like, so the idea being is that if thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people are doing this, it's now trying to figure out what these hundreds of thousands of people are actually, what are they a threat? Are they not a threat? Are they a potential ally? Are they somebody that we can try and co-opt? It's going to be, it gets more hairy the more realistic you make these personalities that Palantir is observing. So and I'm going to go to my show notes real quick on what the actual names of these techniques were used during the World War II. So it's called poisoning the well. It's when you deliberately plant false or tainted information in enemy intelligence streams. So I don't know if you ever saw the movie The Good Shepherd with Matt Damon. It's pretty interesting movie about the genesis of the CIA. And there's a scene in that movie where they caught a Soviet spy in London, and they knew that he was working for the Soviets. So what they did was they approached him. He thought that he was in deep shit. And they said, we're not going to arrest you. And I know you're going to take that folder to the Soviets to give them information. But instead of giving them that folder, you're going to work for us and you're going to give them this folder. And that folder was full of false information to lead the Soviet intelligence agencies and their spy network on a wild goose chase, right? Very useful technique. And this was all pioneered during, before and after World War II. Started with, in combating, the Nazis with the, French resistance and whatnot, but then it wound up becoming more advanced in the Cold War. So poisoning the well is when you know that you're being observed. We all know that we're being observed by Palantir. They're accessing our microphones, they're accessing our text messages. But now that you know that, think of how you can use that to your advantage by having false conversations. You're having a conversation with your wife or your boyfriend or your children. That is not real. It's a scripted conversation. And maybe it's a conversation that they know that it's scripted. So you have no danger of you misleading the people that you're talking to. This is all planned out with the people you're talking to, but you start giving false information. You have false conversations that will now feed the algorithm this idea that you have this viewpoint. Like, for example, if you're a lefty, you have a scripted conversation with your wife saying, hey, you know what? I actually kind of like Trump and I actually kind of like where things are going. You have a false conversation. Now the algorithm is feeding itself this whole nother narrative about you, and it has to discern whether or not that's real, scripted, or not. And the more convincing you can make that, the more it fucks with the algorithm. Now, like I said, one household doing this, not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
but go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, just so it seems like our starting point is we get our pocket of people, ideally outside of our initial household, like ideally not our family, right? Because our family's our family. That's an easy trace, I think, to dismiss. So it has to be people outside of our family and nuclear households. We prompt each other. We start doing fake profiles, fake emails, and we start having these fake text conversations to overload the algorithm. So eventually, like, I think one thing I outlined in the document is that the longer this is sustained, this has the impact of potentially breaking it altogether. It no longer knows how to do its job. It no longer knows how to categorize. So while this might seem really silly right now for some people to wrap their heads around, the long-term effect of sustaining something like that in a surveillance state and with all this tech is actually significant. So yeah, I think that would be a great starting point. Find your pocket of people, maybe people you don't know very well yet.
Yeah.
And just have these whole ass fake conversations, fake relationships, fake everything, because that's another big thing that and I think you outlined this too, is they're looking for Palantir is all about predicting what comes next, what you're going to do next. And it also banks on emotional predictability. If you think, you're having a fight with your partner and things like that. So
if it thinks you're having second thoughts about a political ideology, like, you know what,
exactly.
like this Palestine movement is kind of pissing me off. I think I'm gonna go, the
opposite of what you believe in.
Right. And
straight up.
And the thing is,
as it is.
Now, like I said, if just a few people doing this, it's not going to make that big of a dent. But if this is embraced, if this type of discipline and this type of tactics is embraced in the hundreds of thousands or the millions, it causes so many predictive issues with the algorithm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And they're going to have to create a whole new method of discerning all that. So, but like I said, while they're evolving, we're evolving. While they're getting advanced, we're getting advanced. But we have to start. We have to at least start developing these tactics instead of just throwing our hands up and being, oh my God, they have so much control over our lives. What can we do?
Wow, like we assume the defeatist position before things happen, and that's not helping us. We don't want to wait till there's, cops knocking on our door and shit.
And that's a psyop in itself. These announcements they're making publicly, they are meant to dishearten us, to make us feel like they are so powerful. There's nothing we can do. Why even resist? Just go with the flow. And that it's the reality is totally the opposite. They are scared shitless that we will start doing these things.
Totally. And it's small, it's low effort for us, really. At the end of the day, we got to remember, especially those of us that are already online a lot, like, what is this going to add to your day to take an extra few minutes to send some faux misleading text, to build this like misleading persona or whatever. I do want to consider this a low effort task, because maybe that'll be more motivating for people to start something like this. Like, this isn't a high demand thing that, we'd be asking people to start doing. It's pretty low effort for all of us to start this.
And it's fun. It can be fun. And that's where I'm always big on. Like,
make it fun. Say some crazy ass shit.
Unfortunately, this podcast is co-founded by a little child. I am a child all the time, and I've accepted it. Like, I have no problem being the immature kid that I am. And we need to, and I believe that fun, and again, fun is so underrated when it comes to revolution. It is such an underrated concept.
I love that.
Fun is like, we can talk about geopolitics, theory, logical, critical thinking all day long, but at the end of the day, human beings want to have fun. It's a primal desire. So, and that goes with my theory about revolution, is that until you connect primal needs with revolutionary theory and action, it's just going to be in the realm of activism and theory. You have to connect it to these basic human desires. And this plan, I wrote it with the concept of it being a fun community exercise, because you think about the strategies in this plan, it requires us to get out and start having and doing role playing, doing improv, being creative. It requires creativity, which is a fun exercise. And when you're doing this type of, when you're executing these type of tactics with people that you barely know, what a great way to break the ice and build a collective cooperation than actually being creative with them and having false conversations. It's fun. And it's an underrated concept in revolution. And this plan goes from everything from simple things like swapping phones. So Palantir tracks you with geolocating, right? It tracks your phone. It knows where your phone's at. It associates that phone with your car. So when you have your phone in the car and you're driving at a stoplight, there's a camera, boom, camera flashes, that dude has his phone. So what happens when you swap your phone with somebody who's not you? What if a lot of people swap their phones on some type of routine basis? Well, it starts to break some patterns, and then they have to start going down that rabbit hole of wondering, okay, why is his phone with that car? And they might think that something is up. Like, are they up to something? So now it has to invest time and effort into investigating that person. But if you got millions of people doing it, which target are they going to pick? They may not be up to they may not be up to any type of operation or anything that goes against the will of the state. They may just be doing it just to do it, just to send them on a wild goose chase. Like I said, if millions of people start doing this, then it turns one target into a million targets, and they can't keep up with that. They're stretched thin. They don't have enough manpower for that.
So because Palantir is looking for patterns and it's trying to lump you into a certain group, like, oh, are they a Trumpy? Are they a lefty? Are they this or that? Even creating inconsistent narratives within those new narratives that you're assuming. So like one day you're a Trumpy, and then the next day you're, like a vegan radical. And then the next day you're like a mom, a stay-at-home mom, like making it so they don't know what to do with that. They cannot find an easy link between all of the things. I think is really interesting. And yeah, from what I know about like predictive models, like that is a great way to trip them out. So like that's again, so simple, so low effort, but to add that to the mix, you're not like fully assuming one entire like identity or narrative. Like you can do multiple at once. And this is actually more confusing too. They don't know what to do with that information.
Yeah, and when I talked to Travis, who's a regular on our podcast, he was a major artillery major in the Army, very good in the tech field. He basically said you're not. He kind of like corrected me in the terminology I was using. He says you're not necessarily defeating Palantir, you're degrading its capabilities, and that's the thing. All we have to do is degrade its capabilities to the point where it's essentially like a useless tool. It may be, and again, like yes, Palantir could eventually figure out what's really going on with that one person. But if millions of people are doing it, now it has to figure out all of these interconnecting, contradicting data points.
Yeah. And
that's a nightmare because Palantir is not a human being. It can only work on data it's fed, So home-based deception. So just a little like cute little example. Like if you're trying to give Palantir a false impression about who you are and mapping out your personality, what your viewpoint is. Simple things like leaving your phone next or leaving whatever audio device is near you next to something, the audio of something that does not relate to who you are at all, like a sermon, a MAGA evangelical sermon, or like just or maybe like some right-wing content, or shit, maybe just like liberal content or something.
Yeah, just turn it on and put your phone there. Bam.
Yeah. And so it's going to be, so now it's going to take that data point and be like, oh, he's listening. He must be religious. Okay. So now we have to adjust his risk category as being either a threat or a possible ally or an asset that we can now spam to further bring them down that right-wing fascist path. So there's little things like that we can do. And then we get to, all right, false affinity and deception theater. So it's creating emotional falsehoods to derail psychological profiling. So let's say Palantir, besides just trying to figure out what your ideology is, it's also going to map you out to see what your weaknesses are and where your vulnerabilities are. So for example, if Palantir finds out that you are really depressed about something, then it knows that you're vulnerable. Or if it knows that you're having an affair, well, it can see that as a possible means of blackmailing you in the future or taking advantage of that as an Achilles heel. Well, what if you're having a false affair? What if you're going through something that you're actually not going through? What if you have a weakness that you don't actually have?
Emergency, false family or friend emergency of any kind, really.
Yes. Anything that paints you as having a vulnerability that you don't actually have.
Yeah.
Palantir is going to map that. It's going to put that in your profile, and it's going to be false. So again, now we're building a false profile of ourselves. Let's talk about like map deception. So this was another thing in World War II that was practiced. Whenever a spy thought he was being followed by another spy, they would take false routes. They would change their pattern. They would go to the grocery store and hang out with a friend that's actually not their friend. They would routine a coffee shop that they don't actually go to, or they would go see somebody that has nothing to do with their operation. You think about breaking patterns. For example, you can give your phone to a friend. That friend drives to some event, an event that you have nothing to do with. But now Palantir thinks that, oh, his geolocation is going to this event. Now we know that he's a part of this. We know that this is part of his routine. This is a part of his social network when it's actually not. And mind you, Palantir uses, and a lot of tech companies use this methodology where they can map out your social circle by how close phones are. So if my phone is close to yours for like, say, 10 minutes out of the day, and then it sees my phone close to your phone, 3 days from now, it's now mapping you as one of my close associates, right? But what if your phone is hanging around people that you don't even know? Well, now it's assimilating false associations to you. So the key is, again, this all breaks down into creating a false map about you. These may seem like little things that aren't important, but to Palantir, they are very important. These nuanced details that have given them so much power over monitoring and surveilling our lives. While we're scared of the fact that it's so detailed and how it maps us, understand that because it's detailed, that's a fragile element of that system that can easily be falsified and thereby giving a false map. So feel free to interrupt me at any time too.
No, yeah.
I can go on. So if we make this plan or something like this plan as not just like, I guess, an activist revolutionary habit, but more like a daily household routine, we have to be very evangelical when we talk to people about what Palantir can do. We need to inform our neighbors that, look, Palantir is not just a political issue. This is a very personal issue. This is a safety issue because the people in control of this technology are the most perverse, sick, murderous people you can ever imagine. And now they have access to your children. They're inside your house. So this is a family safety issue. Forget activism, forget politics, forget anything, forget any type of agenda you have. This is a safety issue. So we have to be evangelical when it comes to spreading this message with families, to how serious this is. And I feel like that's also a good segue to getting your average human being involved closer and closer to revolutionary action, right? Like you mentioned, it's hard to get people to be curious about revolutionary action, right? But they take their personal safety very seriously. They take the safety of their family. Okay, well, that's our in. That is our foot in the door to people's lives to bring them into revolutionary action and into the revolutionary body. Because now they're going to want to know, like, okay, well, what else is going to happen to me? You know?
I think one thing this document does really well too, it's very guiding for people who don't know where to start with these things. They might not be the most tech savvy, but they're given examples of like, here's some things that you can do. So being able to circulate this to people will be really valuable because it is basically outlining for them. Like, this is exact, like, they don't have to think much, just do it. Like, gave a lot of examples too of different scenarios that can play out in this document. So it's very user friendly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I as a kid, like it was always fun when we had a fire drill at the school because it was like a break from the mundane routine. Like, oh hell yeah, we can go outside and play.
Yeah,
it's such a primal element of human beings.
Yeah. So we're all like that. Okay, yet another unoriginal experience.
Yeah, or when the power goes out. When you were a kid and the power goes out. Wasn't that the funnest shit ever when the power goes out, you know? You get to light the candles and it was that moment where like everything is blocked out and time just stopped and now it's just you and your family surviving. Yeah, like I remember memories as a kid. I've survived 7 tornadoes in my life. 7 hardcore tornadoes. The first one being in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The big boy that hit Tulsa, Oklahoma that tore through. I was there. And I survived 6 more tornadoes in Kansas City. And I remember when this tornado was ripping through our neighborhood and it was doing this thing where it was like coming down out of the sky and then going back up and then literally just nailing houses around us. It was crazy as shit, lightning everywhere. But God, it was fun.
Yeah,
It was so
lightning.
fun because we all went to the basement and it was like time to stop, and we were in survival mode together, and we had this existential threat facing my family. But it was that desperation, that and having to suddenly change our routine for survival, that to me had an element of community building that I think this, you know, but the tornado being Palantir, you know, in your house. So anyways,
sure.
side note.
No, it's a great side note.
So social web mixed guidance, we talked about that, like creating a chaotic, untraceable social identity. How you do it? You join online groups that have nothing in common. So like I said, painting a false narrative. If Palantir thinks that you're part of like some, I guess, political agenda that has nothing to do with you, it's going to have to start making decisions on whether or not it's real or not. So the example was a dad joining a flat earth group. So if you're a very logical, critical thinking person in this movement, you could throw off Palantir by just joining a flat earth group and making it think that you're like a flat earther. And it's like, oh yeah, this guy's not a threat. He is not a threat.
And imagine the one thing I'm like, okay, we're all gonna have to deal with seeing that on our explore pages and algorithms. I'm like, no.
That's the downside, okay, guys. This does not come without some sacrifice.
Our explore pages are gonna become like just garbage. But hey, if we can't endure that basic discomfort, we're so cooked, man. Like, come on.
Come on. Revolution comes with sacrifice. If you can't deal with like
I don't
some
know
flat
my
earther,
Instagram feed is like flat earth and like Zionist will be a tough pill to swallow, I gotta say.
Oh my God, I know. Oh Jesus.
Following Zionist
so true.
accounts. I don't even know if I want to feed that, or maybe I'll pick something else. Maybe we can leave Zionism off the table. But although that's like the very least, to be honest, it's low key the safest. You follow Zionist accounts, you're good, you know.
They're like, oh yeah, this guy's he's on our side. Oh yeah, he's on our side, not a threat. In fact, let's
do some bullshit.
Oh, and they will try to recruit you if they get that. They'll be sending you messages like, "Hey, we really think you can do a lot more for Israel than you're doing now. You want to do some Hasbro for us?"
Oh my God, I do wonder though if we're using like our personal accounts and they're like, there's like this free Palestine chick following my Zionist page. Seems a little sus.
Maybe she's
But hey, maybe she's confusing the actual algorithm. Which is the goal. That's the goal, not them really.
I mean, like if at the very least, even if you are seeing stuff like that, it's good opposition research. Like I go on Twitter for opposition research. I love going on these very obvious like propagandists, but I like to see what the comment section looks like. I want to see like what are their followers thinking about this? And it's very easy to tell between bots and real people. Bots will always say like a boilerplate like support or some like oh yeah, thank God, thank baby Jesus for Trump. You know, it's always, and it always has like a profile picture of like the American flag with like 2 followers. And that's something that we're gonna have to cover at some point on Colonial Outcast, is how to discern from bot comments, because those are like 80% of the comments nowadays.
I feel like it's gotten so much worse. It has absolutely gotten worse. Yeah. And it's not always like, you can look at obviously the posts and the followers and the following count that they have. Usually, obviously, no profile pictures, 0 posts, 0 follow. All that is a very obvious one. But I think they're getting more complicated than that. Like some of them, they'll have like, usually they have no posts. I don't think I've seen one yet that has any posts. But I don't know. Maybe they're catching on to that and they're going to start like making bots that have more posts and followings. But then I think it's worthwhile to then check that bot's followers. If they're just being followed by more bot accounts, and you can tell us like, okay, these are just bots following bots, it's just going to require us to do an extra layer of research when we're digging into the bots. We're going to have to see if it's just like check their followers, and if it's just other bots following each other, then we'll know that count is fake, right? It's not real. Check their posts and engagement if they start posting. It's just going to have to get a little bit more complex on our part.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I feel like, the sacrifice that they're making that they don't even realize. See, by them using these new tactics of propaganda, like bots, AI is the new form of propaganda, because the old shit of using mainstream media channels like CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, those don't work anymore. Like, people don't care what they say. So I think that in the past 2 years, we've seen a massive upgrade of their tactics, like using Israeli tech companies. But here's the sacrifice they're making. By doing so, you better hope and pray that the population doesn't start catching on, because now we just became more evolved and more advanced and more savvy and more discerning. And now you're going to have to upgrade your tactics. So it really is a cat and mouse game. I think it's a losing game, because we will out evolve them. Our cultures are moving at light speed. They can't keep up with that. Mind you, the people who are in the driver's seat of all of this, who are in the boardrooms giving orders, they're old fucking perverted men. Do you think they're that much in touch with regular society? They have young people working for them who are savvy, but the people at the helm of the ship, they're living on their ivory tower, and that's kind of working for our benefit, you know, stay there. So now, then we get to a more advanced level called fake narratives inside fake narratives, or recursive deception. So basically, you create a multi-layered web of disinformation that seems suspicious enough to attract attention from surveillance systems, only to mislead them into wasting resources investigating something fake. So think about this. Let's say, and this is a common tactic in the espionage world. In the espionage world, if you want to convince the enemy that you are hiding some secret information, then you start to look suspicious. Like, I send you a text, hey, I feel like my phone is being monitored. Can we meet on this chat app? And I will be under this username. Okay, now Palantir is like, oh, okay, something's up. It thinks that I think that I'm going to be secure and going to the secure channel, but it knows that it can infiltrate that. So any information that I relay on that deeper layer, it will take it more seriously, because it thinks that it's something I'm trying to hide, when in fact, it's just another fake narrative. So think about this. Deception is a multi-layered game. You have to be creative with it. You have to create so many different layers where the algorithm doesn't know which layer to prioritize, which layer to take serious. And you think about this, like I said, one person doing this is not that effective, but if millions of people are doing this, it is having to analyze so many different layers of deception. It just gets lost in a forest of God knows what. Long-term deception, you go on a long-term narrative. So as opposed to just doing a short-term spree, impulsive, fake conversation, you actually build a lifelong fake narrative through fake messages to friends that know they're fake. So this is a commitment. But like I said, don't think of it as a chore. Think of it as fun. This is fun. If we embrace the idea of fun in this, it becomes second nature. It's something that it becomes a habit. It becomes something that we look forward to at the end of the day, you know?
And it can take as little as like 10, 15 minutes of your day, and then have an impact in the long run that, you know, has a pretty high payoff if it means that your data and your privacy and your families are secure, you know?
Yes. And as unfortunate as this is to say, me being a dad, parents, revolutionary parents, have to start teaching their kids that they are born into a world that is completely compromised. You don't want to raise them up believing in fairy tales. And this is not, as much as we want our children to grow up in an innocent world, raising them up with the reality that, look, just like we teach them to wear a seatbelt, just like we teach them not to talk to strangers if they're alone, or, you know, if there's a car stalking them, to run the opposite direction, all that, this has to be part of that parental safety measure. And now that Palantir and these tech companies are deeply ingrained in our lives, we have to start behaving in response to that. And it needs to become a habit. Like what we all know about, like, fire safety drills and stuff like that, CPR. We just have to understand that we have to add these on top of our daily lives. But it makes us sharper, and it makes us more safe, and it leads to this evolution, this cooperative, constant evolution among society. Okay, so this paper will be uploaded on our website whenever it is live, hopefully this weekend when we release this, maybe on Sunday or Monday, whenever we get the website up. It will be in the tab called Resource Repository. So we'll have a tab called Resource Repository where we will have these guidebooks uploaded for you to download and edit and change and evolve into your own, like adapt it to your own life. Again, this is just to get the ball rolling and the juices flowing for the audience to start thinking along these lines. So anyways, I don't want to just take up the air here in the room. Like I'm your fan. Okay. So I want to hear your thoughts.
Okay, though, I was just thinking about how this combined with what we were talking about earlier, just that that initiative of getting people to, you know, pay it forward to someone. A lot of people, they're struggling even just to build community. Like, we are living probably in one of the most isolated periods. A lot of people don't actually have an extended community beyond their family, maybe some friends. So I feel like, a big thing that I'm just going through my head is how do we grow more and more people, grow our circles. And I think something like this, and then combined with, you know, doing that pay it forward tactic, and maybe people can document and share it, but just to start building those real physical connections, start getting to know your neighbors and start getting to know, not necessarily your neighbors, but just people around you, know who the mechanics are, know who, like, you know, start building these people that we're going to need for our future alternative system building and supply chains and the world we want to build, not co-opted by these elites. Like, we got to start getting to know them now. So I feel like there's, that initiative is going to be helpful in just in getting people out there and selling it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe in the beginning, like you said, we do got to encourage like sharing about it in some way, as cringe as that is, but just so people hear about it. Nowadays, we mostly hear about things online. Like, that is where the space can become a weapon too. So that's really the point of sharing, is just so people know that other people are up to this. Because really, we don't want isolated bubbles here. We really don't. We want to break those walls between all of us right now.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Cross-pollination and intersectionalism, cross-sectionalism, all of that is what they fear the most, because the biggest concern I think that they have is if we become this neural network organism that starts to evolve and adapt on the fly. Like, they don't want us to, that's why you talk about isolated bubbles, is because it's true, if one isolated bubble is evolving, well, they're not really concerned about that because it's isolated, which is why, like, when it comes to protests, my thing is about protest is it's great that we go out and protest and show the world where we're at, to give a visceral reminder that we're standing against something. However, if that protest, if you take your typical protest of, like, say 100,000 who show up, which I believe the record in DC was it 600,000? What was it? It was like the largest protest last year.
700, something like that.
Something ridiculous. And I'm just like, imagine if every single person in that protest went back home and made 4 friends in their neighborhood who are unrelated to the activism and just use good old-fashioned small talk. Everyday relatable things like, hey, you want to, like, go hiking? Do you like guns? Do you like shooting shit? Do you like whatever inroad you can take in somebody's life, and then show them that you care about them, whether it be like, hey, do you need something? Like, do you have a need in your life? Like, do you need a friend? Do you need money? Like, do you need somebody to help you out with something? Give them that material benefit. Now they're interested in what you have to say. It doesn't work where you just like, hey, can you go check out what's happening to the people in Gaza? They're not gonna give a fuck. But if you tell them, hey, like, I care about you, I want to help you out with whatever you need. Now they're like, okay, this guy's real. Like, this person is real. He cares about me. Now I'm more inclined to hear what he has to say and what he cares about, because I know that he's just not evangelizing me for some other cause that doesn't relate to me. So if you think about all these people who show up to protests, how they go out, and if they were to evangelize in their local area and just make friends, now you just compounded the protest. And that's where the real protest, that's where the real needle moves, because the media can just block. You can have 1 million people show up to a protest, and if the media is not covering it and it's shadow banned all over social media, nobody knows. It doesn't matter. It's like if a tree falls in the wood and nobody's there to hear it, did it really fall, kind of thing. So,
and if those millions of people aren't coordinated with a plan where they're organized in their protests, so they're not just showing up there as individuals with signs, they actually have a coordinated plan, together in that protest. Like, it just doesn't work to have a bunch of individuals show up on their own. I feel like we need to start taking things to the next level. It needs to be a little bit more organized and rooted. And so I want to highlight that the work that you're doing with recruiting veterans and just talking to people on the right, that's not to be understated. Like, historically, if I can just pivot quickly just to talk about
pivot wherever you want. Like, this is
here. I think Portugal's revolution that we had not long ago is really interesting back in 1974, because it was a coup led by people from within the regime that were just over it. It was a military coup led by mid-ranking officials. So just context, 1974, Portugal's been living under 4 decades of fascist dictatorship, and engaging in these forever unwinnable wars in Africa. And they just could not secure their colonies anymore. So the old patterns, these unwinnable wars, they've lost thousands of soldiers. 40% of the national budget in Portugal was going towards this war effort of securing these colonies like Angola, Mozambique, that they just could not hold on to anymore. Soldiers were becoming discontent with the forced conscription for this war that had no end or purpose in sight. And so it was junior and mid-ranking officials that grew tired of this, and they were the ones that plotted the coup. And of course, this was amplified by the Portuguese Communist Party and other leftist parties. They rallied the public support, but on the actual day of the coup, it was these military officers that turned against the regime. And one of the most amazing things that happened that day, so they had a coordinated plan. They took over radio stations, police headquarters, military command centers. And when they were faced with the opposition, the loyalist soldiers, it's known as one of the most bloodless revolutions, like only 4 casualties, because they actually just convinced the other loyalists to step down. It was the rebel troops actually just convinced them, like, you guys really want to fight your own people? And then it was the symbol of this revolution became like these soldiers put, like, there's the red carnation flower, they put it in like the barrels of their guns and tanks just to symbolize that we're not going to shoot against our own Portuguese civilians. We're not going to oppress our Portuguese population anymore. But basically what I'm trying to say is there is a huge value in, there's going to come a period, and I know we're not there yet, but just for some foresight, where the people that are serving Trump right now, the people that are serving the US state, are going to grow increasingly disillusioned. Hopefully it doesn't take 4 decades, right? We don't got that. But like, starting to plant those seeds now, because that is a big part of it. Like, at the end of the day, this was a top-down military coup, like it wasn't a popular movement. Like, it wasn't just a bunch of people took to the streets. Like, it was a very meticulously planned military coup by these officials, and it gained popular support like the next fucking day. Like, people were so happy to finally get that regime gone. But what I mean, that this was a small group of people that was able to pull this off in one day. 4 casualties, ending 40 years of dictatorship and colonialism in Africa. So the disillusionment of these people serving these state regimes right now is something that I hope that we can harness, because all throughout history, that's a big element too. Like, a lot of successful revolutions are from the military turning against the regime itself, So I just want to say that there's a lot of value in that, and it's not to be discredited or understated. There's a huge component of that is changing the loyalty of these soldiers to something that is actually in alignment with them. They just don't know it yet.
Absolutely. Which is funny, because I've been a busy boy. I made a manual on how active duty military can rebel. It's the beginning of a guidebook on a possible route that active duty US military could take if they wanted to join the American people in a revolution. Because, like you said, they're very demoralized right now. American U.S. soldiers. Yeah, sure. You have your SS division in there. You got your white
there's always
supremacists. It's always that person. But I don't want to overblow their numbers or how like they're going to what's that word called where you shoot. It's that word where you astroturf. The internet, like they're trying to astroturf as if there is this wave of white supremacist fascists that's just sweeping across the United States. That's a psyop. Most people are sitting at home like, what the fuck? Like most people have that like this illusion.
That's really good to know, actually, because that was my perspective too. I'm like, oh my God, there's all white supremacists are getting emboldened everywhere. Like Australia just had a big march, and England's had, and I'm sure that's a thing, but we got to remember, they're not actually these mass numbers that we think they are.
They're not in this mass numbers. Now, I don't want to do like racial reductionism where like there's not a lot of racism, stuff like that. Yeah, of course, but the psyop is to create the illusion that what they're hoping for is kind of similar to what I'm hoping for this plan. Is they're trying to create a bandwagon effect. The idea being is that if you can flood the internet with white supremacist comments through bots, if you start flooding the internet with videos of like some random Nazi groups everywhere, you want to create the illusion amongst population that this is sweeping, and then you're hoping that a lot of people will come out of the woodwork and join. Like maybe there are some white supremacists who haven't come out of the closet yet, and we're trying to attract those people out. That's what they're trying to do. It's like taking a magnet and then going through the grass and trying to pick up all the nails. And I want to play this video that gives an example of that. And I want everybody just to take a look at this from just like a very abstract context.
This is power.
Everyone again.
Y'all are signed. You are hurt.
All these guys that U-Haul Nazis.
This is power. Here's a fun fact. Journalism.
Okay, so as we kind of watch this video in silence. Okay.
Spare those chants.
What are we seeing here? Like, what is this really? Like, it's a U-Haul with a bunch of neo-Nazis showing up in some random ass neighborhood for a photo op. What is that? Like, what are they hoping to do in this scenario? And this is where I get extremely suspicious that, like, I have the logic of these types of actions. They don't make sense unless you put it under the context of these are meant to create this illusion that it's just sweeping the country and all of these things are coming out of the woodworks. Mm-hmm. And it's a psychological effect, because what is the point of showing up in a U-Haul van, getting out of a random neighborhood and just giving some like racist chants? It's like, who are you? And as we know, and again, this is where liberals really cock block the conversation. These are feds. These
I was just going to say, there's no way these aren't cops. Like, no way.
Yeah, these are, and there's been multiple scandals about the feds inciting and seeding these white supremacist groups. But then liberals come in the conversation and they're just like, that's a conspiracy theory. Yeah. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And honestly, there's people on the right, the working class right, who are saying those are feds. And then the liberals are like, no, those aren't feds. You're just it's a conspiracy theory. Like, you're just anti-government. And I'm like, okay, the truth is there. There are people on the right wing who believe that these are feds are actually right about that. And the liberals are trying to
look at how hard they go to hide their identity. Like, I've never seen someone head to toe masked like that. Like, these guys had like sunglasses over their like baklavas. Like, you could not see a shred of skin on there. Like, you're not hiding your identity that hard. You know what I mean? Unless you're a Fed doing something like that. Like, I don't know. I'm not buying that these are regular people. It's giving some kind of psyop for sure.
It is. And I think that should give people like a clue about what's really going on, as opposed to us being paralyzed in fear that fascism is, marching on our streets. Like, fascism is here, but it's like, not to the point where we don't have more power than they do. Like, they're emboldened. We just have to be more emboldened. And I would like to remind people that, like, based on what you were saying about the military, the United States, the citizens of the United States, we are a potential army of 80 million heavily armed soldiers, right? There's 300 some million people in the United States. Roughly 80 to 100 million of those people are armed, heavily armed. That's a revolutionary army if we can make that happen.
Right.
Like, we have the largest military on the planet. And I'm not talking about the US military. I'm literally talking about American citizens. If we can somehow unite them, we are 80 million strong with a lot of ammo. So we are far from being subjected to this, like, as victims. I mean, we built this fascist, oligarchical, state. So the onus is on us to, like, understand that we can easily tear it down if we want to, because people in Palestine, they don't have the Second Amendment. They don't have guns like we do. Well, we do. So we are far from being defeated, and we are 80 million potentially strong. And you compare that to what, the 2 to 3 million at most that the federal government in manpower could muster. And that is if you can convince all 3 million of those people to go toe to toe with armed Americans who have mental issues, drug addictions, and extremely pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I hate this. I hate the defeatist attitudes that we're seeing in our culture. And I'm glad you were able to come on and help me with that, because I look up to you in a lot of ways. In so many ways, I look up to your content, and you keep me sane. And I'm your student. At the end of the day, I am one of your students, with the knowledge that you put out there. You have so much historical knowledge about revolution, and you apply that to context of modern day. So it's good to have you in this fight. Well,
I gotta tell you a running joke that we have on the outside here about America, because you guys are so armed, but we always joke, like, Americans love, like, fantasizing about someday they'll need to use their guns to, like, fight the tyrannical government. We're like, bro, the tyrannical government is here. You all got guns in your closet.
Dude, I know.
I wish I had that. Like, if ever that happens, I don't got that.
I know.
Easier
And you know
said
what?
than done, but it is a funny joke. We're like, damn, so many movies made about, like, here's the guns for your tyranny. The tyranny is here. Like
Red Dawn, like the movie Red Dawn, like every kid's fantasy growing up in these circles. Like, dude, we're gonna be like renegade, ragtag revolutionary groups out in the woods, and then Trump shows up, and we're like, back the blue, yay, state, march in my streets, daddy. It's
oh god.
I don't know. It's sometimes I feel like Americans, like, we love abuse. Like, we got some weird fetish of being told what to do. I think it's because we got so much freedom that we kind of want to get, like, hogtied with a gag ball in our mouth. I really do. I think Americans are addicted to abuse. I think we love abuse. I think we love being lied to. I think we love it. I really do. I think we love it. And
media has shaped it to be this way too. There's been a big role in American media to kind of shape this kind of grandiose, I don't know if the performative is the right word, but I guess spectacle relationship, like experiencing the world as like a spectacle rather than like a real serious lived thing sometimes.
Yes. We love theater. We love theater. We grow up with Hollywood movies, and Hollywood movies, like, that's one of the biggest like epiphanies I've been having in the past 2 years, is how powerful movies affect our psychology, with the simplicity of the good guy and the bad guy, and the evil villain who's about to destroy the whole world is an isolated rogue actor who is working alone. But don't worry, the US government and the FBI and the British government are working together to defeat this one rogue actor who is trying to destroy the world. And that was to kind of train our minds to think in the opposite of reality, which is these states, these good guys that are sent out to defeat the bad guy, are the bad guy. and it's actually the rogue actors who are trying to resist against it. And I'm just thinking that simple archetype of a storyline repeated enough through multiple styles of movies with different emotions and music and sexy heroes and sexy protagonist and really gnarly antagonist, it has this deep rooted effect in our psychology to accept
really does.
Oh yeah. And then we project that on and then the Democrats and Republican Party, they play on that deep rooted psychology. So it really was a beautifully orchestrated plan that they had from the very beginning. Absolutely. And they've been better at it than we are. And that's where we just have to accept that that's where our greatest accomplishments will be, is when we finally start seeing ourselves at war and start seeing them as much as the enemy as they see us, instead of each other as the enemy. And instead of this Hollywood narrative of the protagonist and the antagonist and the hero and all that. So anyways, are you a James Bond fan? Did you ever grow up with those movies?
To be honest, I haven't seen the latest ones, but I've seen the old school ones. But I'm not caught up in, like, I think the last like 2 James Bond movies I think I've missed, but the old school James Bond.
So you used to watch the old school James, but yeah, I grew up on those, all of them. I've seen all of them probably at least twice. And the reason why I loved watching them is because they are such a good what's the word, historical exhibit of Western propaganda of antagonist and protagonist. So they're classic. Like, if you want to know about the evolution of Western propaganda, follow the James Bond series and look at how they did that with the different what do you call it, exotic, the Orientalism involved, the and everything like that. So yeah, what was your favorite classic Bond film?
Oh God, I've only seen them once. Not a big fan as you are. But probably the GoldenEye one, just because I played the video game. Do you remember the old school video game? Yeah. So I just mostly because of the video game, but that's the video game with the classic music. Yeah. But I like the story in that one too. It was just the one that stood out to me.
I'm obsessed with GoldenEye. I love it. That's my favorite one too. That's my favorite. My second favorite. Oh yeah, I still got it. I still play it. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. I still play it.
Yeah. This might come as a shock, but I'm still a gamer. Okay, so.
Oh yeah. No, my favorite one. No, I'm a gamer. And having a 7-year-old, it's great because I can still be a kid, and I can just tell the other adults, like, I'm only playing because my son plays. But in fact,
nice. You have the excuse.
I have the excuse.
One thing before I forget this point, because earlier you asked me about reaching out to liberals, and I think one of the struggles, and I think this applies for both ends of the spectrums, is because of this. American media and film and entertainment has kind of shaped, like you said, this heroes versus traitor lens at looking at the world, right? Mm-hmm. And that makes it really hard in times of conflict and for people to understand that it's not a good guy versus bad guy, to understand nuances in between. And the people really want to identify a good guy and a bad guy. And rather than focus on, I think what leftists are better at is like prioritization. For example, anti-imperialist leftists, we know that the U.S. empire is the largest economy, military intelligence agency, so we know to prioritize that first, and so to be able to reach out to people in a more material way that breaks past these, like, who's the good guy and bad guy, just like who holds more power, making people understand power, I guess is the crux of my point, and being able to explain power dynamics better to people and forget the culture stories. Let's just talk about power and influence and what do our institutions look like right now? What does the UN, ICJ, ICC look like right now? Look at the power of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Look at global dollarization. No one has this and just talk about just power in a very non-ideological, material way. That has been the most sobering approach for me to reach out to anyone on any side of the spectrum.
And it's effective?
It's for sure. But you really, because it's the one thing, it's culture wars and things like looking for the perfect good guy in the world. You want your perfect resistance movement, your perfect country. Guess what? You're not going to fucking get that. But if you understand things in terms of how power is structured in the world and who holds it and who's wielding it to do what and how we can distribute it that more equitably and how that benefits all of us, you can kind of break down those reactive propagandist reactions that people have sometimes about like, who they think the good guy or bad guy is, or you know, just being able to just talk about things without their cultural identity and just in a matter of power. Just look at power. So that is like number one. Yeah. So it's not just like the class consciousness. It's also helping people understand power dynamics, like really, truly understand it. We have such an issue with this. We're constantly misplacing power, or not, like the, you know, there's all the anti-Semites who think Jews hold all the power. This, like, we're constantly putting it in the wrong box. And it's because we just don't fully understand it. So that's the biggest thing.
Real quick, can you give me, like, just so I can selfishly have a tool under my belt, can you give me an example I could, if I were hypothetically to get in an argument with the liberal that is not a sociopath, but is actually truly empathetic and, you know, is a potential revolutionary? Give me an example of that.
Well, I mean, obviously it depends, you know, what they're trying to argue about. Is it against imperialism? Is it against capitalism? But
again, if I were to convince them to finally abandon the duopoly of the Democrat and Republican Party.
Big one is talking about the corporate donors, the shared corporate donors. And this is actually widely known information. There's a great website called Open Secret too, where you can just check all the donations that have been made and you can see how they've been funneled into both parties. Because a lot of corporations and even ruling classes, there's about like 160 different ruling classes. This was published in Time magazine that split their donations 50-50 between Democrat and Republican Party, because they are trying to secure their interests no matter who gets elected. And this is also true for Amazon, Google, big tech does this, military industries do this, pharmaceutical, they all put their eggs in both baskets to different degrees, but nonetheless, some of them are like quite 50-50. But being able to just talk about those corporate donors, how the hell do you expect change to come from, if you understand you live in a capitalist world, that states sit below the ruling class, not the other way around. So that's another thing, making people understand that they even live under capitalism. A lot of people think that we live under statism right now. No, like capitalists are the ruling class. States carry out their bidding, you know?
Yeah.
So helping them to understand even just that power dynamic. And then you can understand, well, if you've got a party that is bought by the same donors that's funneling into the opposition party to secure their interests, like,
then what's the difference?
Like, exactly, there is no difference. They're just going to carry out, they're not working for you. Like, they are not working for you, and helping them understand that. So the corporate donors is such a good way to break that barrier, break that, those ideological, but like, we've got rainbows, and like, it's such a good way to just ground them.
But Cory Booker was up for 25 hours. What do you mean? He did a filibuster. He filibustered nothing.
Yeah, no.
That's good. That's good. I mean, that's solid. That's a solid strategy, and I could use that. In fact, I don't know why I forget that. So Open Secrets, I'm going to do that. I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to use that tactic, experiment on it, and then update everybody about how it went.
Yeah, please do.
Most likely you'll see me coming back more bald, but there's a potential I might retain some hair follicles after that conversation.
Liberals are the final boss, man. I'm telling, like,
they are.
Yeah.
Oh man, maggot, nothing for me.
Yeah,
dude. I'll own that room. Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, they're worse. They're worse. It's true.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought, you know, I was hoping it wasn't just me being, I don't know, like a whiner or something, you know, or being weak.
No, that has been so my experience.
That's good. Okay, cool. I'm not alone. Yeah. Great. Well, this has been really fun. Fun
likewise.
episode.
I'm so glad we got to do this.
It's rarely we're able to have an episode like this where we're able to, you know, take our time, have fun, and dive into different topics and go on tangents. I love that shit. That's what I got in this for, you know. But okay, we're gonna sign off with this, family. Please support and send your prayers up for the Sumud Flotilla as it makes its way to Gaza. Tunis they're joining them, so we're seeing a huge snowball effect happening with this flotilla. Let's hope it keeps going, and always keep your eyes on Gaza and what's happening, and talk to your neighbors, as she has so eloquently and non-snobbishly pointed out. And that's one thing I love about you. You're sophisticated, but not snobby, which is a rare combination that you see in these activist spaces. So with that, as always, love you, fam.